loops in Java, what they are, why you need them, and when to use them. This is the first kind of loop, called a for loop. You start by saying the word for, hence the name, and then you declare your int variable that you are incrementing through, and then you have I equals 0, or j equals 2, or whatever you want to call it, and then you have your condition, which is what limits your loop. This can be, this condition checking can be an int, a string length, or an array length, but it does kind of have to be an integer, which is kind of why it's the array length and not the actual array. And then the last bit is the incrementation. This is how you are going through the values of I. This can be I++, like here, the most common. It can be I plus equals 2, it can be I times equals 2, it can be I minus minus, you can be going backwards, kind of however you want to go through I. And how this works is it starts at some amount, it'll check to make sure this is true, it'll run the code, and then it'll increment. It'll check again, run the code, and then increment, and so on until this is false. So the next kind of loop is a while loop. Aptly named again, while, starts with while. So creative, right? So the thing about while loops is that right here they only have a condition. They don't have, you know, the initialization and the incrementation and all that. So they just have the comparison. And this can be kind of anything, which is the cool thing about while loops. It can be that a string equals yes, or that a Boolean is false, or that double is less than 5. So you can kind of compare more things and do more things with the while loop. The important thing to remember is that you have to change your value at the end of your code or somewhere in your code. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in an infinite loop, which is not good because then your code will not work like you think it's supposed to work, and it will just kind of get stuck in this while loop. So make sure you have something here to change this value. So the last kind of loop is a for each loop. Slightly unique, it doesn't start with for each, but it does start with for, so not super unique. But all that it has is this right here. It can look a little bit confusing, but what it's saying is for each value in an array, do something. And the thing about this loop is you gotta have an array, so if you don't know what an array is, don't use this loop. But also, it's only accessing the values that are in this array. It's not actually accessing where those values are. So if you want to change or keep track of where they are, then you need to use a for loop, just a plain for loop, so you can access the indexes. But if you are just checking how many of a thing there are, like how many doubles are above 25, then you can use the for each loop. But if you want to know how many are above 25 and then change those that are above 25, then you need to use the for loop to access the indexes of where those values are. Hope this cleared up some of those subtle differences between the types of loops.